Tonight, on the ground and in the air, the renewed search for two Nova Scotia siblings. Crews return to the rural community.
It fills me with a lot of hope seeing drones in the sky, and I'm grateful for everybody who's applying their search efforts.
Where teams are now looking 2 weeks after the young children disappeared. The delivery dilemma for Canada Post, how recommended changes could impact you.
Nobody wants to either move to or live in a community that has no services.
Struggling with unhappiness, how Canada ranks for child well-being compared to other wealthy countries.
We are barely getting a passing grade as a high-income country.
Plus, the Paralympic athlete chasing adventure.
If it involves adventure, I want to be a part of it.
How a BC man lost his sight and gained the drive to realize his dreams.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. We begin tonight in Nova Scotia, where there is a renewed search for two young siblings who vanished without a trace more than 2 weeks ago. Today, teams were back near their rural home searching for the children. Here's a timeline of this case so far. 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing from their home in Pictou County Friday, May 2nd. Nova Scotia RCMP launched a search with more than 100 people involved on the ground and in the air. On day 6, the RCMP announced the search for the missing kids was being scaled back. While most crews left the area, dive teams scoured local bodies of water but found no evidence. On day 12, police issued a release saying they were following up on more than 180 tips and identified 35 people for formal interviews. And on Friday, RCMP announced the search would resume this weekend. More than 100 volunteer searchers are back in the sparsely populated area 140 kilometers northeast of Halifax. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth is there.
The RCMP won't say what prompted the resumption of search efforts for Lily and Jack Sullivan. But when Daniel Martel heard the news, he felt a wave of renewed optimism that his stepchildren might finally be found.
It fills me with a lot of hope seeing drones in the sky and seeing people back hard at work.
The initial search for the missing kids was called off after only 6 days. Now, 5 search and rescue teams from across Nova Scotia are once again on the ground scouring this treacherous terrain.
The woods here are pretty nasty. There's a lot of storm damage, so there's a lot of deadfall in that. The ticks are really bad. We've had people come out and say they could see them crawling around on the ground.
Search teams are relying on scientific models in their pursuit. There are stats and studies that show how far children could possibly travel in areas like this. Search and rescue manager Amy Hansen says rescue workers are focused and re-energized.
One of the reasons that we did actually suspend was because of the exhaustion and the stress. And we were starting to see more injuries. Everybody's rested, refreshed, ready to go. They're still going to push themselves to the point where they can't anymore.
More than 100 rescue workers are combing through several square kilometers of dense forest, marking off each area searched with a ribbon.
We're also expanding out into areas that we haven't really had boots on the ground in, just to get more areas covered off.
Martel says the last 2 weeks have been a nightmare for his family and the entire community.
This is absolutely heartbreaking, man. Heartbreaking not just for me and Malay and the families, but it's heartbreaking for all of Pictou County.
He's hoping for a miracle, praying 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan will be found. Paul Hollingsworth, CTV News, Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia.
There is growing concern tonight about recommendations that the financially strapped Canada Post stop delivering daily mail and close more rural post offices. CTV's Colton Prale takes us through the potential impact.
A post office is the heartbeat of rural Canada.
This is the small town of Braeside, Ontario, 3 years ago, fighting to keep its post office, but ultimately failing. Now, the town, roughly an hour outside of Ottawa, is serviced only by these community mailboxes. The mayor says for many older residents, that isn't practical or safe due to a lack of sidewalks and municipal infrastructure. But Braeside isn't alone.
There are two meeting spots in Maxville right now. One of them is the post office.
Rural towns across the country could lose these anchor institutions after a new report said Canada Post was effectively bankrupt and called on the government to close more post offices and end daily door-to-door delivery services in order to cut costs.
It makes it difficult for them to thrive into the future because nobody wants to either move to or live in a community that has no services.
But according to Canada Post, door-to-door delivery is incredibly expensive, costing 75% more than a community mailbox. The union representing Canadian postal workers is pushing back on the report, which also suggests the Crown Corporation should be allowed to hire part-time workers to offer weekend parcel delivery.
The government ordered this report, paid for this report, and likely had some expectations of the report.
The report is one of many predicting major losses for Canada Post if it doesn't change course. Some experts say Canada should privatize mail service like Germany and the UK, but continue to offer government funding for rural delivery.
Some role for the government to help fund it, some role for privatization. I think what we need is more of a hybrid model.
The report argues that business case doesn't exist while Canada Post is still governed by a mandate to serve everyone equally. Meanwhile, after months of negotiations, talks stalled earlier this week between Canada Post and the union. A strike is possible as early as Thursday. Heather.
Colton Prale in Ottawa. Security concerns are being raised around Canada's new set of fighter jets. Defense experts say the spare parts for the F-35 jets will be the property of the United States up until the moment they are installed on Canadian aircraft. In light of threats to Canadian sovereignty, there are fears reliable access to those parts could be in jeopardy. The first 4 stealth fighters are set to be delivered next year at a cost of $85 million each. The Prime Minister will attend the inaugural Mass tomorrow for Pope Leo XIV. But ahead of that historic service, Mark Carney met with other world leaders. CTV's Abigail Beeman is in Rome and takes us through what was on the agenda for those meetings.
The new Canadian Prime Minister welcomed to Italy for the inaugural Mass of the new Pope. But first, a day of meetings with other world leaders.
We can bring the G7 to a new level where we build on our values and we deliver prosperity for our citizens.
Italy's Prime Minister noting Canada is taking over the presidency of the upcoming G7 in a, quote, not easy moment. This is Mark Carney's first time meeting these leaders face-to-face as Prime Minister, and especially ahead of the G7. One former Canadian Foreign Affairs Minister says that's so important.
As I learned, the key to good foreign policy is getting to know people, establish trusting relationships, and I think there's nothing better than to be able to share an important occasion with your peers.
It's important when two sides want to finish the war. And we really waited for Putin, and he didn't come.
Ukraine, of course, not a member of the G7, but Volodymyr Zelensky will attend the summit in Alberta next month. Today, he and Carney discussed the latest in peace talks with Russia. The first in 3 years ended with no ceasefire.
There can be no peace without the full support and participation of Ukraine, and that you have our absolute support.
The new pope vowed personally to make every effort to end the war, and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio thanked the Vatican for its efforts.
It certainly is a place that I would think that both sides would be comfortable coming. So we are grateful for their longstanding efforts, not simply on trying to broker peace, but on the exchanges of prisoners.
This is a very important thing that the church can do. And the church is not an armed country, it's a small state, but it's a state with a lot of influence, a lot of good faith that it can provide to the world.
Jean-Yves Duclos, one of 13 MPs and part of the 19-member Canadian delegation here in Rome, along with the Prime Minister's wife and one of his daughters. All eyes will be here on St. Peter's Square Sunday. The inaugural Mass is expected to draw as many as 200,000 people. And after that Mass, Carney is expected to have an audience with the Pope. Heather?
Abigail Beeman in Vatican City tonight. The U.S. president now seems to be diving into a war of words with Walmart. The retail giant issued a warning this week that it will soon have to increase prices on its products due to Donald Trump's tariffs on China. In response, Trump posted on social media today that Walmart should, quote, eat the tariffs and not pass on price increases to customers. The company's CEO has said, given the magnitude of the tariffs, they won't be able to absorb the added financial costs. More than 24 people were killed when severe storms ripped across parts of the central United States, and the death toll is expected to rise. In Kentucky, a devastating tornado shattered buildings and claimed at least 18 lives.
First thing, it lifted my roof off, and then the walls started. You hear the walls coming in, you know.
17 of the deaths were in Laurel County, where entire blocks of homes were reduced to splinters. Cars and trucks were left battered and crushed.
It's hard to see. Homes that are in a single wall left standing. Some homes that have all four walls yet lost the person inside.
Amid the destruction, powerful moments of those trapped in the chaos clinging to hope.
And you talking about praying. I prayed harder than anything I could ever do.
The storms also killed 7 in Missouri, where 2 tornadoes were confirmed to have touched down near St. Louis.
We know that the devastation is truly tremendous. We are estimating right now about 5,000 buildings have been impacted.
The tornadoes so powerful, one was measured to have been packing wind speeds in excess of 260 kilometers an hour. Developing news out of New York tonight, where a Mexican ship has slammed into the famed Brooklyn Bridge. Crowds of onlookers were witness to the Mexican Navy training ship colliding with the Brooklyn Bridge earlier tonight. Close to 20 people are said to have been injured. Authorities say no structural damage was done to the bridge. There are troubling signs about the overall well-being of children in this country. A new global study from UNICEF finds many Canadian kids are not happy and struggle with bullying and loneliness. CTV's Kamal Karmali shows you where that leaves Canada compared to other nations.
It's the final weeks of classes before the summer break, usually an exciting time for students, but for many of them,
yeah, it's like a lot of anxiety.
Plenty of dark clouds are looming.
I definitely feel anxiety about my grades, like what university am I going to go to, just anything about my future and stuff.
That teen anxiety now highlighted in a new report.
We are barely getting a passing grade as a high-income country.
A new UNICEF report card ranked countries on the well-being of their children and youth, based on their mental health, physical health, and skills. While the Netherlands, Denmark, and France topped the list, Canada didn't even make it into the top half, placing 19th out of 36 countries, landing among nations with far less wealth than our own. When it comes to suicide rates among 15 to 19-year-olds, Canada ranked 33rd out of 42 countries.
As a parent, it's a heartbreaking statistic by any measure.
The report also found 1 in 5 Canadian youth face frequent bullying and feel lonely. A quarter of teens also struggle to make friends and don't have a high level of satisfaction with their lives.
The big issue now on teens is the future. I've heard from multiple people that they're stressed about what they're going to do, if it's going to work out.
Part of that problem, many kids, especially Indigenous youth, aren't having their basic needs met.
We need more homes built. We need access to clean drinking water for the ones that don't yet.
And the communication and connectivity youth are now experiencing is mostly online and not enough with parents and loved ones.
We need to focus on social supports, including a regulation of the AI industry and social media. I don't think we have sufficient safeguards there.
UNICEF Canada is now calling on policy changes to education, the healthcare system, and increasing funding to youth programs. That also includes adding more resources like counselors. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up, passion for a piece of history.
From a canoe to cups to blankets to pillows to clothing, apparel.
What's driving the demand for the Bay's colorful striped merchandise? Plus, the motivation that kept an inspirational athlete reaching for incredible heights. When you think of Hudsons Bay, the famous four-color stripes motif is often the first thing that comes to mind. Since the company announced its closure, demand for items from the classic collection has surged. Here's CTV's Kathy Lee with a look at what these Bay symbols mean to Canadians.
It's a rainbow of nostalgia stretching to all corners of the room. This collector's devotion to the Bay is as bold as the stripes themselves.
From a canoe to cups to blankets to pillows to clothing, apparel.
At least 150 pieces in total, and Kent Chapman wants to add more to this colorful trove. Since the company announced its closure countrywide, demand has surged for the iconic items, including on digital platforms like Facebook Marketplace and eBay.
We're noticing that items that you would buy for X has now doubled in terms of price.
Sometimes you hit something in society where it strikes a nerve, and the demand for that product, just goes through the roof.
The upswing, a silver lining to the demise of the 355-year-old company. This artist enjoying a boost in interest for her vibrant paintings of the HBC striped blankets.
The real passion of mine is being able to take something that is missed, something that's really nostalgic, and then breathe new life into it.
Even those jumping on the bandwagon, eager to own a piece of Canadiana.
I'm hoping to pick some up today. Blankets, and I've seen like mittens that are really nice.
And those famous items will be in abundance again after Canadian Tire announced its plan to buy Hudsons Bay brand, its multicolored stripes motif, and other trademarks.
We've got a Hudson Bay Longford canoe.
Which means for one of the Bay's truest fans, his striped-filled journey,
The goal is to continue to preserve what we have.
Is far from over. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Still ahead tonight.
Bell shoots! They score!
Ottawa's professional women's team is making a postseason push. An emotional night for the Winnipeg Jets, particularly for Mark Scheifele. The Jets center scoring the first goal against Dallas, playing just hours after the unexpected death of his father. The team coach saying Scheifele told him his dad would have wanted him to play. Dallas went on to win 2-1, taking Winnipeg out of the race for the Stanley Cup. Well, sports fans might call this a Cinderella run for the Ottawa Charge. The team punching a ticket last night to their first PWHL finals in franchise history with a win against Montreal Victoire. Here's CTV's Josh Morano with all the excitement.
History inside TD Place Arena, the Ottawa Charge advancing to the PWHL finals for the first time in franchise history.
That being able to see your home team make it to such a high point is just there's a sense of pride, right, that you feel, especially for women's sports as well.
8,000 fans selling out TD Place to witness the historic moment, an atmosphere Captain Brianne Jenner says she'll remember forever.
The support we have here is just phenomenal, and I think we've always said that we wanted to give them a run like this to, thank them for always having our backs. And, I think the energy in the rink the other day was just unbelievable. Certainly a hockey memory that I'll remember forever.
The Charge are the first Canadian team to play in the Walter Cup finals, but winning will be no easy feat, taking on the defending champions, the Minnesota Frost.
They've got a lot of experience, winning experience in their dressing room, a lot of great players on their team and a great staff, so we know that we're going to have to bring our best.
And we expect a hard-fought, challenging series, just like the last series, just like their previous series, and the parity is so tight, and it'll be no different come the final.
The team has received contributions from up and down their lineup, including a goal in Game 4 from Ottawa's own Rebecca Leslie and strong goaltending from Gwyneth Phillips, something Coyne Schofield says
doesn't come as a surprise.
She's one of the best goalies in the world, and she has shown it. She continues to show it, and it's just having, consistently knowing she's going to show up every night.
Her tracking and her fight on every puck, every rebound. She just doesn't really give up on a play until there's a whistle. And I think, when she's at her best, she's rising in those moments.
Ottawa will host Game 1 on Tuesday, and fans say they'll be back to cheer on the team.
Oh, 100%. 100%. If someone offered me tickets, I would go. And honestly, yeah, I think it'd be great. I think it'd be fun.
Josh Morano, CTV News.
Still ahead, shattering barriers and expectations. How this athlete is racing beyond his limitations. With his guide dog by his side, a Vancouver Island man is proving there's no barrier to big dreams. CTV's Adam Sawatsky shares his inspiring story.
Although this pup has a capacity for love that's boundless.
Dog is man's best friend no matter what.
And his work as a guide dog is flawless.
He's so enthusiastic about his job.
Kyle Kuhn says what Hugh can do is not limitless.
I wouldn't ask him to guide me, for a triathlon. His swimming and biking is a little suspect.
But to appreciate why Kyle would ask himself to tackle a triathlon, we need to go back to when he was diagnosed with a rare eye cancer and completely lost his sight at 6.
How am I going to play outside with my friends? And that really sent me into basically a depression, and it was scary.
Kyle couldn't see a way to move forward in life until he was introduced to a blind athlete who inspired him to move up through rock climbing.
I fell in love with it very fast.
And fueled by the sport's puzzle solving.
It was putting together this puzzle. How do we get from the ground to the top?
And although he grew up to summit multiple mountains, including Kilimanjaro, Kyle says he always responded to overcoming the mental and physical challenges of solving that puzzle the same way.
It's like, that was so amazing. It's so awesome. Where's the next one? What's the next challenge?
Kyle started going down mountains on skis before challenging himself to do 3 sports in one race as a triathlete.
If it involves adventure, I want to be a part of it.
Well, seeing as guide dogs like Hugh couldn't compete, Kyle started training with human guides like Nico Lightbody, who could.
He's just an inspirational person because he doesn't let anything stop him and has these really cool goals.
And after setting the goals of running major marathons and completing Ironman triathlons, Kyle became a 2-time Paralympian and gold medal winning world champion.
Just because I don't see the world in one sense doesn't mean I don't have a vision of what's possible.
And what's possible for all of us, Kyle says, is to make the choice to push your limits and realize your dreams. And if you can share it with your friends, even better. Adam Sawatsky, CTV News, Saanich.
An inspiring athlete. That is our newscast for this Saturday night. I'm Heather Butts for all of us at CTV National News. Thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.